I really want to start this conversation off with something that might be extremely controversial and something that, as PMs, we might have actually felt is happening now, which is product management dead? And let's explore this concept, I think, in the next hour or so to really figure out what this means. So this is a Venn diagram that, in 2015, 2014, basically caught fire because of how enticing it was to to invite new and upcoming PMs into the tech space. So PMing was always kind of through the lens of the nexus of customer, technology, and business. And product management lived in the center of that, where you would have a very deep understanding of the customer and their needs. You would get to interact with them through interviews and things of that nature. And then the tech was always there. Tech always had a component that was, you can call it magical to a degree, but really there was a barrier to entry because it was helpful, or often it differentiated you as a PM if you had an engineering background. And primarily, I mean, you could do that through school, you could do that through a couple of years of experience in the field and having a little bit of software engineering background. But anyway, the tech component was very strong. And the business side, meaning you understood the unit economics of how SaaS products worked. There was still a little bit of mystique around, what's the right revenue model for the business, for the tech that you're building. And anyway, it was really at the nexus of all three of these domains that kind of PMs in that time kind of found themselves coming into the industry. However, this is no longer the case. This Venn diagram is pretty much out of date now. And I'd like to explore how this Venn diagram has changed, what the skill set is now, and where folks should be putting their focus in this new and upcoming age. I think we have one chat already open. Perfect. Yeah, so we'll come back to this. And then, so what's changed? Let's kind of explore this. Now we have this kind of, we still have the three circles represented by engineering, product, and design. And of course, there's overlap. But for the first time, these separate, you can even call them separate teams today, where product is no longer broken up into those three functions that we talked about, customer, tech, and business. But really, it's really the stack. A typical Scrum team will often have engineering, product, and design kind of working together. So you'll have like 8 engineers, one PM, one designer. That's the general rule of thumb. But I want to explore this idea of how is this, how are these three teams actually converging and actually squeezing product out of the equation? Because if the design side, for example, understands business, they understand the customer, and they have a good understanding of that side, and they can do wireframes, then what is a product person really bringing into the equation? And then if engineering is able to build what needs to be built, and the design side is already able to define the what and the why, then product is no longer useful in this equation. Which then begs the question, where is product going to go? Where is it useful? And what is the future going to look like here? So the traditional product development triad, the product design engineering team, are really evolving. They're collapsing. Roles are becoming far more fluid between the three. Teams are becoming smaller and way more self-sufficient. And generalist specialists are emerging that are capable of handling multiple domains. All of a sudden, the expectation from product is, hey, you can do a little bit of engineering, you can do a little bit of design, but it's not just being able to talk about it and write a spec or write a document to outline what needs to be built and why it needs to be built and collecting requirements. That's becoming the baseline. That's just the bread and butter. It's no longer enough to just bring that to the table and say, my job is done as a product manager. And AI is a threat to all three disciplines in unique ways. And I can give you like engineering is just as much of it a risk because lately, not sure if folks have been kind of watching the news and stuff, but Google has been able to, the new code that's being written in Google 25% of that code is actually being written by AI. And this then begs the question, which I'm sure a lot of you are seeing in the market as well, is where are entry-level engineers going to sit? And there are things that AI can really do well, and there are things that AI cannot do really well. And as AI PMs, it's our job to understand what it can do well, and then how it can help us do our jobs better based on what the team needs. And I'll come back to this as well, come back to this idea. But let's go back to the design side. The design side has the same thing going on with text to image generation interfaces coming up. At this point, design can actually just in plain English define what they're looking for from a wireframe, and there's enough there's enough training and sample data there to really cobble together a design that's far more that really strips out the need for an entry level designer as well. So really, actually, what's happening is the entry level, meaning the bread and butter of what made all of these domains so relevant to Scrum teams, is really going away. And there's a higher level of abstractness or abstract thinking that's coming in that is being required of all three functions simultaneously. So this comes back to this question that we were exploring before, which is, well, if the easy things that each of these functions are doing can be automated or done by AI, where what's the value? The value comes in at the design and well, the abstract thinking and design aspect of any product. And in engineering, this translates into system design and architecture, where you are no longer valued for the code that you write, just the code that you write. You're valued for your experience in setting up the right or configuring and putting together the right components in the right format in the right with the right set of puzzle pieces, really, to not only accomplish the requirements of today, but also see into the future and accomplish like build for the requirements of tomorrow. And that's something that AI cannot do. So creativity, design, same thing. Sure, you can come up with a basic flow, but when it comes to nuances and actually defining what flows you're looking for, and I'm going to we'll demo this actually, we'll work on this hands-on together, and you'll see that even in writing in plain English takes a fair bit of experience and understanding of how to write the question, how to frame it, and how to get that translated into design or the code that you're looking for. I'll pause here because I know there is a lot here. Any questions so far?
We do have one comment that I'm going to read real quick. So
Mhm.
it says, I'm currently building AI agents on Google Colab that can help me enter, refine, and validate data into the database. I'm hoping I can learn something more about that.
Yeah, and I'm looking at this right now, and while we won't go into specific prompts, I'm happy to maybe use a couple of minutes at the end to go through that specific problem. Um, and I'm trying to keep this presentation is trying to be as tool agnostic as possible. So in Colab, I mean, there's also, I would say there's nuances in the tool around uh, even refining and validating data into a database. So I would want to just like understand a little bit more about what that means. So we'll come back to this. Any other questions? Okay. So there's one thing that's certain. Change is coming. And if 25% of the code is written using AI, then PMs shouldn't be surprised at the end of it. And product work takes less time, less thought, and frankly, less PMs. So our goal is to figure out how can we make it actually more fun. And then also, if AI is going to collapse the talent stack, then hand-offs don't equal hands off. And this one, I really like this statement quite a bit because as PMs, our job, we tend to think it kind of ends, or not it ends, but there is definitely a moment where you've done the specking and you've defined what the requirements will be. You've also done a fair bit of work to define what the wireframes and the design will look like. And then at that point, you kind of hand it over to engineering and they take it over. And sure, you'll have some clarifying questions, but you're not fully in the development process itself. At that point, there is an aspect of, well, this team is going to kind of take it over from here. And I would say this is the biggest kind of both threat and opportunity that we face as PMs because now it's becoming possible for us to help and empower engineering teams in the development lifecycle itself. And we'll go into this a little bit later as well. So AI is both a threat and an opportunity. While AI poses a threat to like traditional PM roles, it also presents opportunities. Things like PMs who can adapt and embrace AI, both for engineering and design purposes, can expand their influence and impact. Those who resist change kind of end up risking becoming obsolete. And then also it's replacing tasks, not entire jobs. So this is a very big differentiator is when we see things like, hey, the entry level designer or like the designer is going away. Well, no, not really. It's just what's being expected of a designer or an engineer or a product person is changing so fast because AI is making the tasks that we needed to do in each of these respective roles obsolete. I mean, there are certain tools that I do want did want to point out there are things like that are coming up, specifically something like Chat PRD, which basically allows you to generate a PRD or a spec document by chatting with an interface directly. Very powerful because PMs like we operate in the to-do list, the the summaries, the executive status notes, or things of that nature kind of realm. And what if I said all of that stuff can be automated away if you give an agent enough domain specific information to write and summarize what you need. However, what it doesn't solve is the cold start problem of the understanding of the problem itself. You still need to bring some understanding and context of your domain so that these chat tools can do what they need to do. Otherwise, you end up with just wordy things that don't really actually have a lot of substance. And the substance comes from that subject matter expertise that's still required of all of these roles. So the current state is uh, these are kind of the four things that can really really encompass, I would say, like a traditional PM and their responsibilities: drafting documents, processing feedback, prioritizing features, creating wireframes. And then you work amongst all of these back up and down, side to side to bring clarity. And the output really is a spec or a project plan. And now I want to kind of challenge this, which is, well, I've kind of talked to you about we're automating all of these things away, and there are new things being added to the list. Well, now what's expected? Now it's three core things: automation mastery, skill expansion, and knowledge multiplication. I'll go into each of these things in a little bit more detail. But now you're bringing clarity to not only produce a spec or a project plan, but you're also trying to produce an end-to-end prototype or a proof of concept. And automation mastery, what that really means is identifying tasks that can be automated with at least 75% accuracy. Think of things like implementing AI tools for document drafting, agenda creation, and feature explanation, or focusing on strategic thinking rather than routine tasks. So um, you're being valued for the abstract thinking that you're bringing into your day-to-day work, not the actual things, like the repeat, like the rinse and repeat things that you kind of have to do as part of your ritual. Skill expansion is really that, again, kind of coming back to that three layered Venn diagram. We're trying to break down the barriers between each of the different teams and functions: engineering, product design. Acquiring cross-functional skills like coding, data analytics, and UX design allows you to embrace a lot more versatile and like hybrid type of role. And and I think there is also a little bit of a misnomer with AI and PMing kind of side by side. It's not how do I build AI products as a PM, and there is an aspect of that, but there's an equally important aspect of how do I actually integrate AI into my daily workflows to do more with less. And the knowledge multiplication comes back into this because not only are you responsible for doing upgrading and improving your own processes, but you have to kind of bring that same multiplicative or exponential effect to the stakeholders that you're working with, whether that's leaders or your team members that you're kind of trying to influence. And spreading that kind of this kind of knowledge um, helps get a lot more trust, like helps build more trust in your own capabilities with other stakeholders. And then the final thing is the kind of the future, the what does this actually look like in the future, and what does it actually mean for product leaders? So one, managing AI enhanced teams and workflows. Not only now are you kind of automating your own work, but you're also looking at the team as a whole. And then finally is how can you use AI to create a competitive advantage in your product development process? So as part of your like in each of your organizations that you're in, there are probably things that, if you made easier for engineers, or if you investigated how you can improve the design system that maybe your designers are working with, and just really understand like what their pain points are. Those small improvements can also go a long way if AI is brought into the equation, and it also helps bring a lot more clarity to when you're thinking about the customer and their perspective, you're able to think about, well, does this AI solution actually make sense, or is there a more manual solution that actually should be implemented? Because of course, AI is just a tool in the tool belt. It's not everything. It shouldn't be used as a hammer, and not every problem is a nail. So on that part, I'm just going to come back to this. Okay, perfect. So with that in mind, let's actually do a hands-on activity. Before we get started on this, does anybody have any questions on the content that I've covered so far? No? Okay, sounds good. So there are actually three tools. We won't go into chat PRD as much today, but I would like anybody who's interested in kind of following along with a hands-on activity. We're actually going to be building our own app in this session, believe it or not. And we'll build it from scratch. And we'll do it using a tool called cursor.ai. So I'd love for everybody to kind of follow along. Feel free to go to cursor.ai and download and install the code editor on your computer. And once you have it complete, and Perplexity is another tool, you can open Perplexity on the side. If you're not familiar with Perplexity, it's really the it's really basically threatening Google's core business, which is search. You don't need a pro subscription. Even a free subscription is fine. So if you want to open that up on as well on the side, I basically want to show you how you can debug and solve problems using both of these tools as you're building this app. And I mean, this is extremely powerful because no longer do you need to just write out requirements. You can actually translate those requirements into a workable prototype. They're actually able to demo and then go into the visioning. So we're gonna start this. Uh, for anybody who needs help kind of installing or gets stuck, feel free to ping. And then we're just gonna use this session actually to like the next few minutes to just kind of get set up. And then the two things that we're going to be building together are a to-do list app. So really, and we're just going to be using simple HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to make this happen. And then we're actually going to analyze a data set. So hopefully, cursor.ai. So it's uh, cursor.ai. Um, and I'll post this data set link as well uh, in the chat so you can download this. And we're actually going to go through a complete data analysis exercise as well, all in Cursor. So Cursor is capable of handling obviously multiple programming languages, and we're going to do this both with like really with four different programming languages. So let's get started. Um, while folks download this, I'm just going to stop sharing. And then once you're finished kind of installing, or if you need help installing, feel free to raise your hand and I can kind of help, or if you also want to share your screen. I don't think you'd be able to share your screen, but I can try to help remotely. Um, so we can get started. So the first, yeah, if you can put up your hand, Jacqueline, are folks able to raise their hand or just say,
Yeah, people could raise
uh,
their hand and unmute themselves.
okay, perfect. Yes, it is cursor.com. So I'm just going to put the link in the website. Or sorry, link in the chat. Generally, the process should be the same that I'm going to be following for Windows or for Mac. There might be some nuances. You might need to install Homebrew or certain packages and set that up. But I really would advise you to try and debug things for yourself. Try to figure things out because that's what's going to teach you the most as part of this process. We're really going to try and get an understanding of what it is that developers often have to go through when they're building their own apps. So I'm also going to share. Okay, perfect, Catherine. Okay, thank you. Awesome. So let's also use the so this is going to be interesting. Let's actually do a little bit of a product exercise now as well. So with a simple to-do list app, if you were a PM on this and you were being asked to write up a spec on hey, like we want to build this new cool to-do list app. What are the requirements that we should have in place? Let's brainstorm together what those requirements could be initially, and then let's actually translate those requirements um, into the code editor. And yes, here's the data set. So I'd love for people to come off mute and just kind of shout out things or kind of outline things that they think a to-do list app should include. Is everybody able to see the doc that I have pulled up?
Yes, we see it.
Perfect. And we'll actually yeah, go ahead.
So Chinmay have the ability to add new tasks, prioritize tasks.
Yep, perfect.
Set a due date.
Sorry, what was that point? What was that point, Chris?
A due date.
Yep. Yeah, perfect.
Timeline, add a reminder.
Yep.
Basically,
Add dependencies
all the
between tasks.
operations, like create, read, update, delete operations on tasks.
Yep. Perfect. I was hoping someone would say that. Yep.
Statuses.
Okay. Cool.
And maybe make it something more interesting as in creating tasks with simple English.
Creating tasks with simple English. Okay. Now, this is a perfect example. Now, if you were to bring this to an engineer, what do you think the questions they would ask on this requirement would be? Because it's a little vague, right? How can we make this more specific?
And maybe text length, encoding. Is it just English language, or
Yeah.
is it?
Well, yeah, I was kind of curious. Like, are we trying to generate, like, are we trying to actually have a prompt on the side where someone can say, hey, create me a task to do A, B, and C, and then it'll actually create and follow those things? Or is it something a little bit more advanced?
Like with AI to figure out the subtasks?
Okay. So the ask is to be able to break down a large task into smaller child tasks.
I was just suggesting that it could be more involved like that. So I think that's might be where you were going.
My thinking was that the first 6 or the first 5 items could be done using simple English queries through Slack or some kind of bot where you can say, hey, to-do list app, create me these items. Like you would talk to Alexa, right? Same thing, but now you're just talking to the app and chatting with the app, and the app is creating it behind the scenes, and then hopefully it'll give you all the reminders. Basically, what Slack is doing these days.
To me, it seems like the question I would ask is it how would the information be added? Are we going to have fields for people to add information? Is it open, like you were saying, and on like, is it through voice prompt or is it text based? Is it an open field where, open box where you put a box in the screen and people just put the train of thought? And I think there's a number of different, this is obviously very high level, like you were saying. And it needs to be much more specific for an engineer to be able to execute on it.
Yeah, yeah, in fact, that totally makes sense. In fact, you could probably do like what Chat GPT 4.0 does. You can upload images and interpret. So we can probably do something on the napkin, upload it when the image can be processed. Again, you do a lot of fancy stuff, but again, it depends on how complex we want to do and the strategy behind this app. But you see the point. Image based as well. You can have image based. You can take a picture, send it to the board, and the bot will create those from the whiteboard, I guess. Yeah.
That we're using like AI-based solution?
Yes, yes.
And setting a due date implies that there's also some agentic aspect to this associated with like your calendar. Or
Perfect.
or not even agentic. It could just be just a query. I mean, it doesn't have to be that fancy.
No, this is good. Even integrating with local or different cloud or sorry, calendar applications, right?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. So I think typically what would happen here? Like we would kind of, write out in a typical even Amazon fashion or product development process, we would want to flesh this out and have all these requirements with a large layer strategy in place and then have a set of prioritized requirements. Cool. But ultimately these are just words on page, right? And they don't have the full kind of effect that we would like. And I think I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the chat as well. See a couple of things in there. Yes, sorting tasks as well. That would be a good one. Um, generate a plan for the day, calendar for the day based on task list. Okay, so this would be, I would say, areas to explore, right? Yep, reminders through other interfaces. That's cool too. Yep. So then we did have setting a due date, integrating with other local calendar applications. This becomes more of a integration question. It's not a MVP question. And then reminders, right? Okay, cool. So now let's actually translate this a into an actual MVP and a workable prototype that we would potentially want to take as with the spec that we want to present this with. So I'm gonna switch over to not that, but okay. So I'm actually gonna start this directly from scratch. All right. Open folder and to-do list. Perfect. Okay. And then we are going to open.
Are you intending on sharing your screen? Because we can't
I
see.
am.
Okay.
Yes, I'm just getting things set up on my side, and then I will switch over. Okay. Okay. So, with that in mind, share my screen. So let's actually build this out now. I mean, why not? Why talk about it and why write it out? Let's actually make this happen. So first of all, I'm gonna open Cursor. And on Cursor, you're gonna the first kind of opening screen that you're gonna see is really like open a file or folder. So in this case, I'm gonna actually create a folder for my app that I want to build, and I'm gonna call it to-do list sample. I've already built this app once, and we're gonna actually go through it together, so you can see how I do it in real time. So in the to-do list sample, I'm gonna just select that folder because that becomes my workspace, and we're gonna start it from scratch. Cool. So you don't have anything here. We're gonna create 3 files initially because any web app really needs a few things. One, we're gonna start off with an index file. So we're gonna call it index.html. And folks, feel free to follow along here. I'd love for like this to be hands-on for everyone in this conversation. You don't have to do it in Cursor. I think you can also do the same thing in Colab. It'll be a little bit different. And Colab, you'll need to the best part of Cursor, I'm going to kind of show you how this works is
Excuse me, can you just zoom in a little bit? It's the screen's very tiny. Please.
Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
good point. I
just want to ask, what is the default VS Code? Which one?
Sorry, default VS Code?
Yeah, on the keyboard, which one should I select? There's options like Vim, Atom, Sublime.
Uh oh, in the actual selection, like once you've installed Cursor and once you're setting it up,
Yeah, I just started.
I think VS Code should be fine. Or I think I think it's the interface that you're looking at. I can't remember what I picked. Whatever you're most comfortable with, I would say. And I'm also just gonna look at how I can make this a little bit bigger. Oops. Okay, Control plus plus. There we go. Nice. Hopefully that is more easier to see now at this point. Okay. And then I'm just going to open some stuff on the side as well. So we have our requirements on one side and we have the coding on. Perfect. And I'm also going to, here we go. Okay, so now we're going to create two additional files. We're going to call the other one called style.css. That becomes our CSS file for any padding or any colors or anything that we want to have on our web app. And also we're going to create one more file, which is going to be our app.js file. That's where all the JavaScript will be kind of held. And I'm going to also change here we go. Okay. My presenter bar has also gone away. Cool. And we're going to actually start generating a code now. So yeah. So in this case, you should be seeing something like this. So I would recommend that you actually create a folder wherever you want on your local machine to point and to have this project kind of be stored, if you will. Okay. So now let's make this happen. So we're going to take these requirements and actually convert it into live code. And I'm going to also to this side. So I'm just clearing up my space. Okay, there we go. So we're going to hit, nope. We're going to hit Control L. For anybody who's on Windows, you can hit Control L to open the chat interface. And for anybody who's on Mac, you can hit Command L. And this will open up the chat interface on the side. And at this point, you can actually see the whole point of cursor.ai or cursor. And really, any of these tools is you can actually pick which model you want to use to generate the code that you're going to generate. And we're going to start asking this. So we're going to start with build me an HTML container that for a to-do list app with the relevant JavaScript and CSS files embedded. Yep. To-do list app should allow users to input new tasks in a text field. They can create, update, and delete tasks. The user should have the ability to reorder and rank tasks by priority. Tasks can and then in the modal. So this is where actually, again, it becomes relevant. It becomes extremely important to actually have the right language in place too, because we're gonna actually go back and forth and do the actual iterative development process, all without engaging a single engineer. Um, the to-do list app should allow users to input uh, new tasks. Yeah, okay. When a new task is added, a modal should pop up that allows for a task title and task description as an input. The user can then save the task or cancel the request. Okay, let's start there and we'll come back to this. Yeah, just gonna confirm. And let her rip. So you can see it actually takes like just my requirements and turns them into real code that's also commented in and has the right callouts. It's a priority to-do list. And we can actually, it's as simple as just hitting apply and accepting this change. And we're going to go down. And would you look at that? There's also a basic structure for the CSS. So we're just going to copy this because this is called main.css. We can actually choose to just change our file names to match this or the other opposite. I'm just going to make it easier. I'm just going to rename my CSS file to main because there's going to be callouts in the script above. But you can also do the opposite. You can ask for follow-ups. You can say, well, like I don't want to call my CSS main. I want to call it a style CSS. Update the code accordingly. And I think we're going to see a similar thing here. We're just going to click apply. And cool. So app.js actually worked as is. And we are going to also apply the same thing in our main. And there it is. So we can accept it now. So that's how easy it's become for for someone in our really in our function to build a working prototype. Now let's actually see how we could demo this and see how we could make this work. So we're gonna go live. You can actually open a terminal here, and in terminal um, you can like start a live preview. So I've installed something called uh, 5 server, which allows you to launch like a local host in your browser and actually view this app. However, as you're going through this, you're going to realize, okay, maybe I don't have a server. Like, what extension do I need to go install? And I would advise you stick with it. Try to figure your way out of this, and don't be nervous or don't be scared and don't be scared of the bugs that you come up with as well. This is part of the development process, and it's only going to give you a lot more insight into what actually happens when you're going to an engineer and the things that they have to do. So we're going to go live. Perfect. It's now running in a local hosted environment. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, cool. So this is not showing up the way it's supposed to.
You're looking at the CSS file.
Yes.
What's the difference between just doing it in Claude and like what does Cursor have besides just sort of like the direct application instead of having a copy paste?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Claude is going to generate code that you're going to copy paste into your terminal, but you can't really, if you have different variables or you want to integrate the code that you're working with outside of the code base into the code base, then you're going to have those challenges. Like it won't be able to read and update the code base live. Um, the main advantage is like you can, I mean, you can copy paste, but you have to kind of assume that all the code that you're writing is being copied over from Claude. And then in this case, it's not just Claude that you can use. Um, you can use other GPT models as well. Like I can actually switch this to ChatGPT, or I can switch this to even I think there were a couple others that I could select from. O1 Mini. Yep. So there's a couple of options. Mhm. Oh, sorry, I'm not able to hear you that well.
I'll just type it in.
Okay, okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's just take a quick look as to why this might be working. Task button, have a task list. Yes, and okay, let's just look. Says that is, I'm just gonna copy this over here. Time and see. There we go. Cool. So now we actually have we have two buttons really. We have just the one button. We have at least a title. So we're going to add new task. Now this isn't really working. And I wonder why. And let's try to figure this out. It's primarily probably because we didn't specify enough in the set of requirements to be able to generate this code. So I'm just going to update this now. To break it down. So I'm going to actually move this a little bit out. We're going to start very simple. And we're going to move this down here. Okay. So, okay. We have to actually specify the app should contain a title, one input field, together with two buttons, 1 unordered. And this is where things become far more interesting. Even like when you take requirements to engineers, I mean, this is the level of detail that they actually need. And through this process, you can actually understand, like, do I have the level of detail that I need in my requirements? And you can have this back and forth. One order list with checkboxes on each line and a create button for adding new tasks on the list. Cool. When a button, perfect. So the to-do list, so this wasn't good enough, meaning this requirement that we wrote was too vague. So now let's break this down further. When the button is clicked, a modal box should appear where the user can create a new task on an input field or cancel it, right? There were too many requirements here. Let's break this down further. The to-do list should not new tasks in a text field. The user can update existing tasks by clicking on the item in the list and having a modal appear that already contains the task title and description. The user can then edit that, save changes, description, at that point, and have 3 buttons, right? Let's go with that. One to save the task, one to delete it, and the other to cancel. Let's start there and see how far we get now. Make sure to include the style, and we're going to call it app JavaScript style.css files in the HTML. And let's see what we can do with this now. So it'll actually modify the code that's already written, meaning it's reading from the code. And this is the other advantage. You can copy paste code into Claude, or you can copy paste code into any ChatGPT or a GPT type model that you'd like, and have it like read that code and try to make edits to your code base. But again, it's kludgy. It's not all integrated, and it's not all in one environment. So now we can do a quick check. We can also read the updates that it made. The key changes that it made is, so would you like, perfect. So styles main, CSS for custom styling, JS for the, would you like to provide? Yes. There we go. So let's update this first. We're going to hit apply. And we're going to see what it's changed in the code base directly. And then we're going to go down and we're going to also copy the code here. I think if we click apply, it should accept. I'm just going to make sure that it's also being reflected here. And we're going to go to the JS file and we're going to hit apply. And we're going to see what's changed. And it's updating the JS file that we have as well. Accept. Copy paste.
So I'm to send a friendly heads up that we have 5 minutes left.
Yes. So I think we should be in a good spot, and I'll switch over after, and also show folks how we can do a. You can actually build. You can try and take this exact same kind of process and workflow that we've done and translate it into a simple data experiment as well, using the data set we've discussed. So we're gonna hit apply. Just gonna save everything to make sure that it updates right, and then we're gonna relaunch that server, and then we're gonna actually able to see. Perfect. So it's actually updating real time. Perfect. So now let's do a quick check on this. We're gonna call it task one. Okay. Interesting. So perfect. We have a task title, we have a description, we have a priority assigned to it. Let's see how this works. One, we're going to enter a random description. We're going to call it medium, low, or high because it already assigned an order. We're going to add one more task to do a quick check. We're going to call this low. Okay, let's see how it goes. Perfect. So now we have the ability to rank order. We can make changes. Folks, this is how powerful this stuff is. I was able to code up an app, a working prototype of something like on a session like this. So at this point, there's basically no excuse for PMs not to be able to do, build their own prototypes and bring it to meetings and really showcase the kind of thing that you're building and have the right granularity in the requirements. I'm gonna flip over. Unfortunately, I won't have the ability to walk you through how this was built, but I'm going to show you a simple like pipeline or a simple analysis that I ran using the Spotify data set. So I loaded the data set up. It was a CSV. I downloaded it directly from Kaggle. You can see it on the top left hand corner. I'll just zoom in. And all I did was I started off with help me write code to explore the songs.normalize CSV using Python. And this is how powerful it was. Um, I was able to actually run this code and it showed me the outputs that I needed, and it also generated a seaborn plot that with a correlation matrix that I could use. Again, this is not stripping away your understanding of machine learning that you need to have and statistics. However, it's basically stripped away all the coding or all the syntax that you would otherwise need to write. This is how simple it's become, and that's what I wanted to really showcase the power of here in this session is in literally what 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I've been able to show you an app from start to finish from scratch. Um, and I've also been able to like this setting up this Python script literally took I think 5 minutes to do. And this is only the beginning of what's possible. At this point, you no longer need a simple data. And I haven't even talked about the idea of actually being able to chat with the code base. No longer do you actually need to rely on engineers to explain what's happening in the code. You can import a code base that you're working on into this and have a natural language conversation about what's going on. And I can show you this. So I'm gonna just very quickly. I know we're at like 2 minutes, but I want to show you the chat functionality with the code itself. So I'm gonna open up another chat. Help me explain. Help me understand what is going on in this file. And you can actually see line by line about what's happening, what the steps are in each without the comments, of course, in place. You can make edits. You can add the different steps that you want in your data pipeline. Uh, like it's insane. It's extremely powerful. And it was a very exciting thing for me because it basically strips away all the ambiguity that you would otherwise have to face by feeling that you need to bother developers to understand what's going on. You can have a far more nuanced discussion with them. You can understand your product better. And so I really hope this kind of help people. And I know there's a bunch of things in chat, so I'll switch over to that now. Um, but yeah, I'd like to open up the floor to any questions. I know we're almost at time, but no, we don't need a developer key for ChatGPT to actually get this up and going. It can be completely free. Claude, I have a subscription to Claude, but I'm not have I this is by the way, this was all using the free version of Cursor. I haven't paid for anything. Okay, and I can paste the prompt in the chat as well for folks if you would like to replicate it on your own as well. Nope.
I'm going to read one last question before we wrap up because we are out of time. So we have a question that says, can I write this scenario in ChatGPT and ask to recreate this HTML where cursor is more advanced?
I mean, either option is fine. Again, I'm not, this is why I'm saying it was tool agnostic. You should be able to do the same thing in any GPT that you wish, Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT. But the idea was that at this point with GPT out there, whether you use Cursor or not, you can build your own apps. You should be able to get your spec into a working prototype before you talk to any stakeholders. No longer do you need a developer to work on and committed resources or committed developers to work on your project because, well, you should be able to do this all yourself. Really, that's what I was trying to showcase. In my opinion, I think either option is fine in the sense if you have an existing code base, it's easier to use with Cursor because it can read your existing code. However, if you're building from scratch, then it doesn't really matter.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much for such a great presentation. I really enjoyed it and I learned a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me and best of luck to everybody on the session as you kind of evolve
Yeah.
your AI PM careers.
And I did put the link to our upcoming learning program in the chat. So if you like, I definitely recommend checking that out.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Of course.
And thanks for
Thank you
joining
so much,
everyone.
everyone. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. All right. See you
Okay.
later.
Bye,
Yeah.
everybody. Thank you.